Hello everyone and welcome to Electron Empire. Today we'll be breaking down all you need to know about RAM and its utility, and at the end of this video you'll know everything you need and you'll be able to pick your RAM precisely. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to learn more about PCs. Let's get started. RAM, which stands for Random Access Memory, can be seen as the short-term memory of your PC. When you're playing a game, your CPU will use your RAM to store data such as player health or strength, so it can access it way quicker than if it was simply stored on a drive. If you have watched the video about CPUs, you may see some similarities with what I've explained about cache memory, and that's because it's pretty much the same, the main difference being that the RAM is slower. There are two main factors to take in account to know if a RAM is good. First, the frequency, and second, the latency. Let's talk about frequency, also called clock speed. The frequency of a RAM module defines the number of clock cycles per second, which is basically how many times it updates each second. It is measured in megahertz. For example, a RAM with a frequency of 6000 MHz has 6 billion clock cycles per second, so the higher the frequency, the better. But that doesn't mean it will be able to actually transfer data 6 billion times per second, as the latency is very important too. So, what's latency? The CAS latency, sometimes abbreviated CL, measured in clock cycles, is the number of clock cycles elapsed between the moment when the CPU requests data and the moment the RAM accesses it and sends it. For example, a CL30 latency means that there is 13 clock cycles between the request of the data and the moment the CPU receives it. The lower the latency, the better. So, a 6000 MHz RAM with a CAS latency of 13 won't exactly be able to transfer data 6 billion times per second, as it needs 30 clock cycles for each operation. DDR4 and DDR5 are the two latest generations of RAM. Let's look at those examples. If you look at their specifications, you can notice something. DDR4 has a lower frequency than DDR5, but DDR5 has the highest latency. It is also good to know that motherboards are only compatible with only one of them. Either your motherboard supports DDR4, either it supports DDR5. So, which is best? Well, even if DDR5 has the highest latency, the huge frequency boost compared to DDR4 makes DDR5 better than DDR4, so we'll prefer that for gaming. One thing I didn't mention before is the capacity of the RAM. Unlike cache memory, RAM comes in big size, such as 8, 16 or 32 GB module. The more you have, the better, but too much will just become overkill. Another thing to note is that usually, if you have 16 GB of RAM for example, you will have two modules of 8 GB, as having only one module of 16 GB will cut frequency in half for some technical reasons. We'll finish with a very important thing that most beginners forget. When you buy RAM and install it on your PC, you have to activate something called Intel XMP or AMD Expo, depending on what your CPU is. It will allow the RAM to reach its actual speed because RAM modules are capped at a lower frequency when this is disabled. And that concludes this video on RAM. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you found that video helpful. That was Electron Empire, and see you next time!